Hey, what's going on? Appreciate you tuning in. Breaking news: Jon Jones, arguably the greatest in UFC history, has announced that he is retired, and Dana White confirmed this post-fight press conference. Um, I'm not surprised based on how things were going, but I am surprised on how this is sort of a disappointing end to Jon Jones' career. I think he has stained his legacy even further with this move. Going recently in an interview, Tom Aspinall's name is mentioned, and he says it's wild and off the cuff, and decides to leave. But let me get this out of the way before we dive into my full thoughts here. He is the light heavyweight GOAT. He is the greatest of all time in the light heavyweight division, but his heavyweight journey left a lot to be desired, at least to me. And I think at the end of the day, it will hurt his story when it's all said and done. Let's dive into my thoughts, though. His last fight at light heavyweight was Dominic Reyes in February 2020, a fight that some people say he lost, and I can hear that argument. I wouldn't shut it down. You know, I'm totally for it. I can understand. And maybe he felt that fight was too close, and maybe he had to move to heavyweight, right? He was like, yeah, I got to get out of here. Perhaps it truly was a new challenge he wanted, right? He ran through the light heavyweight. Now let's go up to heavyweight. Makes sense. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe when he stated that he was going to move up, he said he was going to need some time to adjust the new weight or something along those lines. So, you know, so he wants to make sure that he learns to perform, and he has his speed, his accuracy, his movement with the additional weight, since it's new territory for him, so to speak. For me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. This guy's top of the food chain in a brutal sport. He's beating everybody. Why not? Hell yeah. Take some time, get your body right, adjust, and then run through your whole weight class, because he is that great, right? I'm like, all right, just get right and go. But at least, you know, that's what I thought. But to have his first fight 3 years later after that, I felt is sort of a waste of time. To me, I was thinking maybe a year and a half before he made his heavyweight debut. You know, take your time, no rush. But 3 years, that's a lot of time, especially in an athletic career, right? At the end of the day, this is athletics. You're taking hits, you're taking blows, you're taking damage. This is something you have to be 110% committed. You can't go into it half-hearted. So, okay, he beats Ciryl Gane in spectacular fashion. Takes him out in like 2 minutes by submission, barely takes any damage. Who's next? He wants to fight Stipe, who was just brutally knocked out by Francis, you know, terribly, but you know, sure, you want a legend, I get it, add him to your resume, and you proceed to wait another year and a half before fighting, and you do eventually destroy his midsection with that spinning back kick. So who else can bring a challenge to Jon in this division? Well, the interim champ can. That's the next guy. You know, that's who's been actively fighting, who's been going through the people in front of him, finishing everybody with a TKO or a submission. And I think in 2022, he blows his ACL, injures his knee in that fight. He ends up losing, right, because of the injury. But he comes back a year later, 2023, the same year, Jon fights Ciryl Gane and fights 2 more times before Jon even fights Stipe. So Jon in 5 years fought 2 times. To me, the hunger isn't there, and you should have just walked away. He should have just retired, right? 2 fights in 5 years, that's a lot of time wasted. And instead of the true champion being able to move forward with his title, his reign, Jon was allowed to hold on to the title. Jon was allowed to hold the division sort of hostage. And Dana, I get it. Jon has earned that right? He's earned arguably the greatest of all time title. But at the end of the day, you have the responsibility to the other fighters on the roster to keep the division moving, to keep the opportunities going. You know, careers are short. And Jon hanging around with no intention to fight damages those people's opportunities. I think that's where Dana went wrong. The UFC went wrong. But it's an unfortunate end to what I had hoped would have been a legendary run at heavyweight. But instead, he lost time, and he had off the field issues, making the news for those. Recently, the Albuquerque Journal reporting he had another one of those incidents, catching another charge. I just hope he makes better decisions. I hope he enjoys his life. I hope he stays out of trouble, hangs out with his brothers, just lives good, man. Live normally and live good. But if he does decide to come back and fight anyone else but Tom Aspinall, he essentially confirms what many believe is the true reason for this retirement. and it's that he ducked Tom. As always, a like, a comment, a sub, a follow, all that good stuff goes a long way. I really appreciate you tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.